Christians need to know this. They need to know what's out in the woods. They need to realize that you don't just have to have a house.
Hey friends, this is Brandon Spain, and you're listening to the Unrefined Podcast, where we unravel mysteries, share perspectives, and navigate the rich landscapes of the seen and unseen together. We would love for you to connect with us on social media. You can find those links and how to subscribe to our members-only exclusive portal by visiting unrefinedpodcast.com. Now, for this week's episode. Hey, you guys. This week, we are delving into the awesome, fun topic. We're going to talk about some Bigfoot. We're going to talk about some Dogman and maybe even some UFO if we go there. We got a good episode waiting for you today. But first, I want to introduce our hosts that are in the studio, Lindsy Waters and BT Wallace. Hey, guys.
Hey.
Our guest today, he's local to us. That's what's so cool about it. And I hope to build a relationship with him where I can go do some of this investigation with him one of these days. His name is Marcus Ellis. We welcome him to the show. He's a cryptid researcher, investigator from Mississippi. He spent the last 8 years in the field investigating Bigfoot, Dogman, and UFO. So, yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. Thank you for being here, Marcus.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor. I'm totally honored.
Thank you. Well, to get us all started, I'm going to say a word of prayer, and then we'll go in from there. Father, we just ask that you'll help us to glorify you. We want to glorify you in this conversation, and just Holy Spirit, lead us to the different things that you want us to talk about. It's all about the audience, Lord. It's all about the people that are out there, and we bless them. And if there's any nuggets that somebody out there has to hear, Lord, I just pray that you'll bring it up and it'll come out in the conversation. We ask all that in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So to get us started, I'm going to ask you a question, and just to kind of give us some more background information. Tell us about yourself. How did you get into all things Bigfoot?
Well, I got into all things. It wasn't just
okay.
Bigfoot.
That's funny. I was going to ask you if Bigfoot was your gateway drug, or if you got into all of it at the same time.
Well, I'm a child of the 70s, so does that answer your question? I mean, everything was out there in the 70s. No, when I was a young kid in the early and mid 70s, you had this big, huge paranormal boom. You had the Bermuda Triangle, you had the Loch Ness Monster, you had hauntings just running rampant. You had a huge UFO flap in 1973. One of the culminating events that happened here in Mississippi was the Hickson Parker abduction case. So you had all that going on, plus you had the Patterson Gimlin film, which was shot years earlier, but now it was really hitting newspapers. It was, I mean, I was a little kid, and I don't know if I'm gonna tell off how old I am, but we used to get this little thing in school called the Weekly Reader. I don't know if anybody remembers that or not.
Yep,
but
I do.
one of the issues of the Weekly Reader, the headline was about the Patterson Gimlin film and sighting. So, of course, I was big into comic books and science fiction and horror movies, and I'm sitting here going like, "Holy crap! There's real world stuff going on here that's not just in the comics and the horror movies." So at that point, I just literally became a sponge. So from the early 70s up till today, anybody that I could talk to, preachers, pastors, people that had sightings, books, magazines, I jumped into it, and I just never stopped soaking that stuff up. And in the late 80s, I got into, I became a professional musician. And so for
what do you play?
A bunch of, my main instrument is bass guitar.
Okay.
I'm, I'm not nothing great by any means, but bass is my primary instrument.
I'm learning the guitar right now, the 6-string. So yeah.
Yeah, I found out after about 3 weeks that because I could not become Eddie Van Halen or Ace Frehley, I'm like, okay, I gotta pick something. I gotta bring it down
Now
a
you talking
notch.
my
I gotta
language.
pick something
Yep.
a little bit easier. So anyway, those years doing the music thing, uh, and then in the early 2000s, I turned my life around because a lot of my life was not with God, and I became a Christian musician, which Lindsay is familiar with some of my bands
Yep.
and all. So I got
Dream like
into,
Lazarus.
yes, indeed, thank you. For a bunch of years, that was my life. That was my fix. But then, somewhere around 2006, 2007, we parted ways, and I found myself with a whole bunch of time on my hands. I'm like, "What? You got way too much time, kiddo. We got to find something to do." And of course, then I'm thinking back to all my paranormal fun days of learning and reading and researching and all. So I got into finding the podcasts about Bigfoot. And I found this one particular podcast that's real popular now. I don't know if I can say the name or not, but
Yeah,
that
absolutely. Go
gave,
ahead.
it was Sasquatch Chronicles, and
Yeah.
Sasquatch
Yep. We know it.
Chronicles educated me into the fact that all your Bigfoot sightings and all your Bigfoot encounters, it's not Harry and the Hendersons. It's really more so like the Sasquatch commercials with the jerky. Yeah. Most of them are not, they're not fun encounters, and some of them can be very frightening and downright dangerous. And I was sitting there thinking, oh well, Bigfoot was just this big, shy, lovable forest creature, forest buddy. And I soon realized, because of what witnesses were coming out and talking and saying, that was not the case.
I think
And
that's what they wanted us to think, Marcus. I think they wanted us to think that he was that Harry Henderson,
Mhm.
the
right,
powers that be.
R- and that's a very good point, especially when you look at David Politis and the missing 411 stuff.
Amen. Yeah.
Now he'll flat out tell you that he doesn't believe that Bigfoot is responsible for a lot, if not most, of these disappearances. I mean, he won't even go there. I don't. Maybe he doesn't
Yeah.
believe that. I feel like it's a lot of things causing these disappearances. But after hearing some of the sounds, this is what really got my butt up off the couch. I had been listening to this podcast for about a year, and I had just adopted a big, beautiful black and white tuxedo cat. His name is Logan, and he had been here in the house with me for about 8 months. And one night, we went to bed. It was maybe October, and about 2 o'clock in the morning, I had to get up and use the restroom. So I got up, did my thing, and I come back and laid down. Well, once I laid down, Logan, who was laying in the bed with me, he repositioned himself right by my chest. And about 2:05, from my bedroom window, which I'm looking out now, to the tree line is probably about 50 feet. All crap in the wood line just erupted. It just went nuts. I'm
Wow.
hearing all kinds of craziness up in the woods, these dark woods. And you have to stop and think, okay, is it, owls make some really freaky, they make monkey sounds, as a matter of fact.
Hmm.
Coyotes, they make some weird, strange things. But at the
Foxes.
lower end of these sounds, there was this grunt. There was this ooh, ooh,
Hmm.
ooh. It sounded like a gorilla. And Logan, my cat, he went nuts. I mean, he absolutely freaked out. I'd never seen him do this before. Me and him both, it was a fight for both of us to get up in the window to see if we could see what was going on. This scared him. So we're both like, what the heck? So I reached out to a Bigfoot organization. I'm not sure if they're, I know some of the guys from it. I know they're still out there and active. I'm not sure if the group is or not, but I reached out to them, and they were like, well, yeah, man, that sounds like a possible encounter. And I'm like, who can I talk to about this? Who could I tell? And they go, well, do you know this guy in Yazoo City named M.K. Davis? And I'm sitting here,
Been on the show.
scratching my head,
Yep.
and I'm like, MK Davis, MK Davis. And I'm like, wait a minute. Heck, I used to go to church with the dude. Yeah, what's up with MK? And they told me all about MK and what a big name he is in the Bigfoot community. I'm like, well, can you put me in touch with him? And they did, and I called MK. And to make a long story short, the end result was I just asked MK. I'm like, man, do you mind taking me in and putting me under your wing and mentoring me and teaching me and training me on this stuff? And he did. And I can't tell you how grateful I am to him. And he's a incredibly great, awesome friend. And the knowledge with that man is just totally incredible. It's off the scale. He's taught me so
Yeah.
much about giants and Native American stuff. It would have to do 5 shows just about MK. So,
Yeah. Yeah, we've done 2 with them.
oh really? Yeah, I'll have to go back and
Yeah.
find them. I bet they're a blast. But
Yeah.
that's where I got started, and I got into MUFON right before COVID hit, and which that was awesome because not only did I have training from MK, I had to go through all these classes and courses with MUFON, and I just learned an incredible amount about conducting an investigation and what to do, what not to do. Um, and that occupied a lot of my COVID time because we're all scared to death. We're stuck inside, and I spent those 2 years doing UFO investigations. Um, and then when that kind of got a little, I don't mean this disrespectfully, it got a little tiresome. I went over into the experiencer resource team dealing with alien abduction, and that was very interesting, and I learned a lot there. So um, again, I kind of decided a few months back to I wanted to get back to my roots because it's a lot easier, and I see why MK is kind of off and out there on his own. It's just easier at times instead of dealing with organizations and all this stuff to be able to go out and do what you need to do, what you want to do, when you want to, and instead of kind of having to follow uh, a different drummer, as they say.
Yeah. Yeah. A bureaucracy kinda.
Yeah, yeah, just a little bit, but I mean, it's a good bureaucracy. It is what it is. You can't be successful and have everything like the OK Corral. It's not. You can't be Dodge City. So I get that.
Yeah, Marcus, what's been the response kind of from the believing Christian community to your work? I know there probably hasn't just been one response, but what in general, what's been the response, would you say?
Well, I have a best friend who is a former pastor. He's
Mhm.
all over it. We talk every day, and at some point during a conversation, he's going to say, "Well, what's happened with the Bigfoot thing? What's happened with the UFO thing? What have you found out about the Nephilim thing?" With him, it's been really cool. I haven't. I've only talked to one other pastor, and it's funny, Lindsay, you asked that. That was just 2 days ago. I work with a
Hmm.
gentleman who is a pastor, and in my office of my day job, I've got some posters uh, from Small Town Monsters production, some of their production art hanging on my wall.
Yeah.
And we were looking at that, and he was commenting about it. And I said, "Well, I said, what do you think about the possibility that we could be dealing with Nephilim descendants?" And his eyes, they got big and they bulged, and we chit chat, and he's like, "Well, I hadn't really thought a whole lot about Bigfoot and stuff like that," but he said that's possible. But as far as like in mass, I did one YouTube video a few months back, and I think the title of it was, I think it was Nephilim Giants in Mississippi. I think was, and I was at the Winterville Mounds outside of Greenville. This huge,
Greenville. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm standing there looking at this thing, and I'm like, how could a small tribe of Indians build something that huge? And I had checked out a lot of L.A. Marzulli's videos and documentaries, and he showed in some of his work that a tribe of 40, 50, 100 Native American Indians, and I'm not saying every tribe was that small. I mean, I don't know.
Right. What Indians was it that was there at that Winterville mound? Was it Natchez?
Oh gosh.
Yazoo?
Up there.
Now that you're asking me that, I'm drawing a complete blank. If I had my notes in front of me, I could.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. I was just curious what tribe it was.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very good question. But I throw this video up. I filmed some stuff while I was there, and I put it up on my YouTube channel. And I don't get a whole lot of hits. I mean, I'm kind of low key. I'm not really out there trying to get famous or anything like that. I throw it up, and if people watch it and like it, hey, I'm happy. If they don't watch it, that's cool too. But anyway, I put this one video up, and I got a bunch of hits right off top of the bat. I mean, boom. And I was like,
Mm.
wow, I throwed Bigfoot stuff up grandpappy and hadn't hardly got a second look. And I throw up something about Nephilim, Indians dealing with these things here in Mississippi. And it kind of busts wide open. But I had a couple of pastors comment on that video, and they were both positive. They were like, wow, that's really interesting. I'd never thought about something like that. Of course, I hadn't either until I started digging into it about 8, 9 months ago. And all that M.K. Davis stuff started flooding back in. And I was like,
Yeah.
maybe that's what MK was talking about. But yeah, I got off into to some serious, not that I'm an expert by any means on that stuff, but I've learned a lot. And Scott Carpenter, I really, when Scott Carpenter came on the scene years ago and started talking about Bigfoot being Nephilim descendants and stuff like that, I kind of, no, Bigfoot, it's a big hairy hominid. It's an
Mm.
undiscovered primate. And but the more I started looking into the Nephilim thing and the giant thing, that turned me back to Scott Carpenter. And when I started reading Scott's book, I think the Nephilim Among Us, the expanded edition, it cracked everything wide open for me. I'm like, and man, Scott passed away about a year ago, and that's just a huge loss to the Bigfoot community. But what I learned biblically, historically, and what Scott discovered in his research, it really just opened up my eyes to the possibility of what these things are and what they're doing out there. Y'all were asking about the response from Christians. I really haven't taken it into a big venue yet, but I will say this, and this is something that Scott talked about pretty regularly. I was telling my friend I might put together a PowerPoint so that if a church or somebody wanted me to come in, I could talk to them about the Nephilim and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
of course, you at some point in your research, you have to get off into the Book of Enoch and the Apocrypha and stuff like that. And when you do,
Right.
a lot of pastors and preachers, man, that they're ready to
Yeah.
go nuts. They don't like that
Yeah.
stuff. They don't, and you can do it. You don't really need that. It's right there in Genesis chapter 6. It's
Yeah.
right there in Corinthians when it's there. It's all through the Bible being talked about. But my buddy who was a former pastor told me, he said, you're going to have you start talking that in some churches, he said, you're not going to make it 10 minutes. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I guess I got to rethink that. And I will. But I will say this real quick. I have always been doing what I'm doing, especially the MUFON, the UFO thing, the abduction thing. I have always done what I do, not just for me. I mean, yeah, I love it. It's thrilling. It's fun. It's exciting. It's cool to get out into nature. That gives me an excuse to get outdoors. Um, and yeah, it can be dangerous. You'd be a goof to think that it's not. I've been in some dangerous situations,
Mm.
but my thing is, I look at it now. I look at it as my little small ministry. If guys like Scott and other people are out there, Christians need to know this. They need to know
Yeah.
what's out in the woods. they need to realize that you don't just have to have a house to have a demonic entity in it. These things are out in the woods too. And
Yeah.
if you go, these 3 Indian mounds where me and MK go all the time, we call it Hell's Gate. And let me tell you something, out there, broad daylight, middle of the morning, I've had a residual haunting, and I had a demonic entity try to follow me home. And I was
Oh, wow.
Bigfooting. I wasn't even
Yeah.
thinking about, and I realized when that happened, I'm like, Catch, you got to go home. And I did. I stripped everything down to the foundation. I stripped everything down. I'm like, you can't just be a Bigfoot guy. You're going to have to be like John Keel and some of these other folks. You're going to have to wear a bunch of hats, or you're going to find yourself in trouble. And if I had not known what to do with that demonic entity,
Yeah.
that could have brought that thing home. You hear about on Skinwalker Ranch, the hitchhiker effect. I could have done that. And let me tell you something, that's not something I'd wish off on nobody. So I kind of do this as a ministry, but again, kind of going back, I really haven't like en masse talked to a bunch of Christians or pastors and preachers, but I would like to. I would love to do that.
Not yet. Not yet.
Yeah,
Well, look, I have a question, and you've kind of already answered it, but I want to steer it to a different direction.
sure.
There are two types of beliefs of like Bigfoot, Dogman, particularly with Bigfoot, but I want to shift more towards Dogman. But in the we've noticed in our interviews and doing research that there's two camps, so to speak. I know there's probably more than this, but there's basically two camps in the Bigfoot camp. The one is the ape hominid animal type
Right.
Bigfoot Dogman, and then there's the other. I call it the woo woo, which is the supernatural, the connection to this. I know you've noticed this that it happens in clusters. You have Bigfoot sightings, you have Dogmen, you have aliens and paranormal experiences all in these same clusters all
Yep.
over the place.
Absolutely.
So, what do you think about that? I know where you come down. I've already figured out you come down with the paranormal and the supernatural. Part of that's probably because you're a Christian, right?
Yes, absolutely. I am. Yeah. Um,
Yeah. So,
I mean, you can see and understand why there's these different camps, because it's just like you pointed out a moment ago. These things, a lot of times, they're physical. They leave
yeah,
evidence. They leave footprints. They leave hair. They leave
and
saliva.
poo.
They leave
They leave
blood,
poo poo.
and
I heard.
yeah, they leave feces.
Yeah.
This stuff is there. Um, so that's why you've got that ape camp. These are physical creatures that are here 24/7. Now, where I fall down, I'm kind of off in the middle, because
Okay.
I believe now that you do have certain Bigfoot, maybe not all, but you do have certain Bigfoot that are here in our woods and in our forests 24/7, 365. I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have these witnesses come forward that say, I saw this Bigfoot walking across this field. It turned, it looked at me, it saw me, took 3 more steps, and boom, it disappeared. It vanished.
Yeah. You hear that a lot.
So,
Yeah.
and the footprint thing, how many times have you guys heard, well, we heard something outside, it was snowing that night, and my son saw a shadow out on the edge of the lawn. So the next morning after breakfast, we went out and we found these huge footprints, and they're going across this field, and we followed them up by about 100 yards, and all of a sudden the tracks just stopped.
Mm.
No tracks, nothing where they jumped to. They're just gone. And people have, again, they've seen these things disappear. So how does a flesh and blood creature do that? I mean, I can't do that. And when you stop and think about it, man is kind of sort of at the top of the food chain. We can do many things, but I can't
Yeah.
walk out in the middle of a field and disappear. But apparently these creatures, these entities can. So that throws you over into the as you called it, the woo. And I like to refer to it more so the portal camp. They're
Yeah.
going
Yep.
somewhere. They're if you can just pop in and pop out, you're going somewhere. So that throws you off into the what are you? What is this? What creature is able to do that? So that's where your head just wants to explode because it's just so bizarre. But John Keel, way back when John Keel was investigating the Mothman sightings in Point Pleasant in the 60s, he started out as a nuts and bolts UFO guy. Jacques Vallée, those two guys had a huge influence. They really started changing my outlook. And then again, like I said, Scott Carpenter about a year ago. But they knew back then, they knew back in the late 70s and the 80s and all, why would a alien want a bag of concrete? And that happened. I mean, this Jacques Vallée reported in one of his Alien trilogy books that this light popped. This farmer was out working in his field, and he sees these small beings come out of this craft, and they walk up and they're talking. And well, what is that? And the farmer goes, well, that's called concrete. And they're like, well, can we have a sample of the concrete? Can we have a bag? And the farmer goes, yeah, sure, I'll go get you one. Farmer goes, comes back, guess what? No aliens, no UFO. It was this bizarreness. And the same thing happened with Keel. And they both started realizing this is not all nuts and bolts crafts. This is like stuff that goes back to the fairy folk, the wee folk, the little people. And they started connecting that. And when you start looking at that, especially with UFOs, but it also applies with Dogman and Bigfoot,
Hmm.
this stuff goes back to the beginning. And if it goes back to the beginning, then why would it not go back to the Bible? Why would it not go back to Genesis 6?
Yeah. Let me ask you this: Do you think that the Bigfoot, Dogman, all this stuff is strictly Nephilim, or do you think that it's possibly that these aliens, and I'm doing that in quotes for my audience,
Hmm.
because I have a theory about that, are
Okay.
making chimeric type stuff. Is Bigfoot a chimera or is he a Nephilim? And if he is, how do you kind of figure that? What led you to that conclusion?
I would say D, all of the above. I mean,
Okay,
when people go to
makes
ask me
sense.
that question, is it A this? Is it B this? Is it C this? I go, it's D.
Yeah,
It's all of the above. Um,
yeah.
I lean. Here's the thing. Again, I'll say it like this, and this is something that I really was not. I'm not speaking ill of MUFON, and I don't want nobody to think that I am because I love MUFON.
Right.
But one of the things that I had to be careful with when I was doing and talking with alleged alien abductees, I had to be real careful when it came to pushing anything about Christianity and stuff like that. And
Right.
and I'm sorry, I just the gray alien, in my opinion, what I've seen, what I've studied, what I've learned, the gray alien is a demonic entity.
It's just
It
a
is
meat suit.
it's an avatar. And yes,
Yeah,
I believe
that's
it's
a
a
good
meat
that's a
suit.
good word for it. Yep, that's a
It's
great word
it's an
for it.
avatar.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's people who say they're hatched, manufactured, or cloned.
Yeah.
Hmm. Well,
Yeah.
again, I don't know if any of you guys have seen. I forget what documentary number it is, but L.A. Marzulli's got a documentary about the cattle mutilation
Yes,
phenomena,
we saw it.
and
Hmm.
what
Hmm.
he posits is, man, it's frightening. I mean, He's basically saying that the alien abduction thing are these aliens, these demonic entities harvesting the biological matter from these cows because their DNA, like their blood and all, is a match to us. You could get a transfusion of cow blood and you'd be just fine. I mean, it works. So there's something about the cattle DNA that he feels like these entities are harvesting and that they are creating modern day Nephilim. Now
that makes that makes perfect sense, because my wife and I were just talking about this morning. And for women that are going through menopause, a lot of times they give them bovine uteruses and reproductive organs, and they put them in little pills and they take them to help them through menopause. So that right there scientifically proves exactly what you're saying.
Exactly.
That almost gets us into chimera territory there.
It does.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does.
Yep.
You can't take the that chimera aspect out of any of this. But when I first heard that, I'm like, holy crap! They're using this material to create hybrids, and LA feels like that Satan and the fallen angels and whatever, he feels like they're building an army, like your black-eyed kids,
because they need a body to inhabit.
Yeah.
He feels like your black-eyed kid is like you've had all these crazy, when you go back to the 80s and you start looking at the abduction phenomenon, and women would they would be pregnant, they would lose their child in the middle of the night, all of a sudden they're not pregnant now, but then they're later abducted, they're taken on board this ship, and then the Greys will march in this child and they'll go, this is your child. And it's got the big eyes, the big goggly wraparound eyes, long stringy hair. They're real frail. They're very pale. And these women would feel this connection somehow. But again, his theory is that when you take all this breeding that has been going on since the 70s or the 80s up till now, he feels like the black-eyed kid is the end result, as if maybe to say, hey, we've kind of perfected this. And a lot of black-eyed kid encounters end very badly for people. I mean, it's
really funny. My wife is more creeped out by black-eyed kids than she is Dogman and Bigfoot.
She should be. She should be.
Well, it's the soulless factor. When you look in their eyes, there's no soul.
There's nothing there.
And BT sent me a video yesterday about containers, of this guy admitting that they're containers. And I think that's what they do. They clone these grays, and then the entities get into the containers. It's like a meat suit. And they're able to do, because we know from the scriptures that spirits, particularly unclean spirits or spirits of the Nephilim, have to have a body to be able to do what they need to do in this world.
And it's a constant struggle for them to get into a body. That's why when people start experiencing that first initial onset of weird things in their house, eventually it's going to result in infestation and possession. And it's because those entities, they're craving not having a body. And they hate us so badly that they want to, especially anything that they can get their claws at that loves God and worships God. Oh, you got a big bullseye on your chest, but especially your unbelievers, your people that are not believing, and I'm not trying to get on a soapbox here, and I know you guys aren't either. But it's a lot easier for people who don't believe to have encounters and bad ones with these entities.
Well, you know what it reminds me of? I don't know if you've ever been to the Far East, and I haven't, but I have gotten objects from the Far East that I quickly disposed of.
Yes.
You know, the little Buddha idols have
Yeah.
holes in the back of them for the spirit to inhabit the idols. I mean, Lindsay, you can probably
I've
vouch
heard
for
of
that in
that.
China and stuff. And so that's what they do with us. They find holes that they can inhabit, open doors, so to speak, and then they inhabit us just like they do an idol. And that's what they want to do. They want to make us idols, I think. That's just shade tree theology.
I mean, again, when you go back and look at, and my pastor friend, he was the one who turned me on to the notion. All my years of going to church and hanging out with my pastor friends and pastor buddies and preachers and all. Not the first time did anybody say, "Well, do you know where a demon comes from?" And
Mm,
I figured that, okay, a demon is the angels that rebelled against God with Satan, and they're not down here doing us any favors either. Let's
no.
be honest about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But your actual demons, he's like, no, they are the spirits of the Nephilim that died or that were killed because their soul could not go to heaven because they weren't created and endorsed by heaven. They had
Yeah.
nowhere to
They're
go.
hybrids.
So when they
Yeah.
died, right, they were a hybrid. Their soul wasn't created and blessed by God. Ours is.
Yeah.
So yeah, they had nowhere to go. So they're, as a lot of my research taught me, they are craving to get back into something. Look at Jesus and his encounter with Legion. These demonic entities were so desperate. They were so, number one, they were scared to death of Jesus, and they had every right to be. I just thought it was so, and I mean this in a good way. I thought it was so funny and so powerful that when Jesus told them to shut up, they shut up. And but then they were like, "Well, where are you going to send us? What are you going to do to us?" Because they knew who he was, and they were like,
Yep.
"Let us go into the herd of swine." They were willing to do anything they could to get away from Jesus and to get inside something.
Something.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
I think those arid places that they talk about in scriptures too. I mean, I know a lot of historical critical interpretations of the Bible love to, even though they love to spiritualize those passages and the arid places and all that kind of stuff. And it probably has a dual meaning, but I think the arid places is some sort of an afterlife. Um, it's not like limbo in the classic theological church teaching of limbo, but it is kind of a limbo state. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
Yeah,
they can't.
because they can't go to hell. That's the
Yep.
thing is they're not able to go to Tartarus or hell, but they will go to the lake of fire at the end of time.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Kind of going back to the whole embodiment thing, I just got to thinking that embodiment, as much as we like to complain about these bodies, sometimes they give us trouble.
Oh yeah.
Embodiment is a gift,
Yes.
one that we
Yes, it
take for
is.
granted.
Yes.
And these entities, they long for
Yes.
embodiment so bad. That's why the resurrection of the dead is so important. The
Exactly.
ultimate embodiment, not just some spiritual floaty thing, but what God
Yeah.
always meant: flesh, um, indwelt by a spirit. And yeah, these entities know that, and they want it.
And the church, and this is a rabbit trail, but I'm going to go here. The church has disembodied the faith. It's made agnostic instead of particularly some branches of the church, instead of a corporal or a flesh faith. It says in John that it's from Jesus if he says they came in the flesh. And see, and that's so essential. Well, why is it essential? It's essential
Yeah.
because that is how he made us, and is what makes us better, the sons of God versus the Bene Elohim. Um,
Right.
if you guys are good here, I want to go to Dogman, man. Let's talk
Okay.
Dogman. Tell us
Okay.
about when you
Absolutely.
introduced to him, what you
Experiences,
know
yeah.
about him, and then how it fits in all this classification we've been talking about.
Well, I can't lie and say that I have encountered a dog man. I haven't. And uh, I will say this: the two Bigfoot sightings that happened with me, I had always told people, if I ever see a Bigfoot, I want it to be off at a distance. I want him way out there, and I want to be way over here. And that's
Yeah.
and I kind of got that. both cases, I managed to have that come true.
Did you
Again, I
smell
have
them?
not.
Were they stinky? Like,
There was too much distance
okay.
between us, so I no, I could not smell anything. Now the one that I saw, I'm sorry, and I apologize. I keep getting away from Dogman, but I promise you I'm coming back to it. But but the last one that I saw was in a wildlife management agency, which is not too far from my home. I saw the whole thing, and he was probably, or I say it was a he, probably 200 yards away. It was close, but it was not enough that I just freaked out. So now, going back, Brandon, to the Dogman thing, I'm coming back on point for you. I have not encountered a Dogman. Again, if I was to encounter one, I would definitely like for it to be off at a distance. But
yes,
again, the three Indian mounds where I've mentioned a little while ago. Again, this is out way past Satarsha where this happens. I'm not going to give the exact location because there's people that live in those areas, and you have to be respectful of other people's land and property. And
well, and you don't want to scare people.
No,
Yeah,
and you don't want people flooding into a place.
Yep.
Where's the ghost at? That I would be a real popular guy real fast if I call something like that, and I'm not going to do it. You want to know about it? Hey, we'll talk all day long, but I'm not going to get on here and start blasting locations and stuff like that. But anyway, these three Indian mounds, there's and you said you knew where they were, and I don't know if you've ever been out there and walked around them or anything, but
no,
I'm going to say it like this.
I hope to with you.
Okay, well, yeah, we will. We definitely will. Here in the next few weeks, when things cool off, we'll hit it.
Yeah.
And that's not just me saying that. That's a promise. But the three Indian mounds, that's where, whether I was by myself or whether it was me and MK together have had just a plethora of things happen out there at this place. And here's why. Something that MK taught me right off top of the bat was, where you have Indian mounds, you're going to have Bigfoot. Bigfoot goes together like peanut butter and jelly. But I've also found this out too, and I caught on to this with Linda Godfrey's works. Indian mounds and Dogman, and what I'm fixing to tell you in a second, could possibly drive this home. And there's another critter that's out there that's very large and very big. And me and MK, we have both got confirmation from witnesses that have encountered the chupacabra.
That's what I was about to ask you about. Yep.
We had this guy that had his whole livestock pen. He had hogs and goats in there. These things came in one night and killed everything in the pen.
Don't they just suck the blood out of them? They just like vampires, sort of. Isn't that what they do? Or they?
That was the main thing that was digested, was the blood.
Raccoons will do this too. Raccoons will get into an area and slaughter a bunch of like chickens and stuff. But
that's true.
That's it. When you're talking, that's it. But they don't do the other things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, a 300, 400 pound hog or goats.
Yeah.
They don't have the means of doing that. But yeah, in this case, most of the blood was gone, and the prime meat, it was there. It was left intact. But again, when you have Indian mounds, you're going to have the Native American Dogman thing come into play. And that was something that Linda Godfrey picked up on, and that's revealed in a lot of her works. So with MK teaching me about Bigfoot and mounds, I found out about Dogman and Indian mounds, and I realized Indian mounds they can be a hot spot. And
epicenters.
They can be epicenters. They can be, as John Keel talked about, these window areas, as he referred to them.
Portals.
Portals, yes. And I made a huge discovery out at these Indian mounds. I'm trying to remember when it was. If it was first part of this year or end of last year. But I went out there. It was winter, and it hadn't been it hadn't been too long before that it had rained, but then it had dried out. So I got there early one morning, and I like to go like really early. I like to go crack of dawn. I'm not a night owl, and honestly, most of the weird stuff that has happened to me has been pre-dawn hours and
Hmm.
early morning hours, broad daylight. Um,
Oh,
I'm telling you,
daylight. Okay.
you don't have to be a Bigfoot investigator or a Dogman investigator or whatever. You don't have to wait till midnight, 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, and go run around the woods. I've had just as much happen to me in broad daylight.
We don't need our
We
our
don't need the
night
night
goggle,
vision.
night vision. Yeah.
Although I've got that,
Yeah,
but
I'd like to get a pair. Well,
oh
let
yeah,
me ask you about that. Have you ever encountered in the whole chupacabra dogman stuff any kind of like mimics or anything like that? I mean, have you heard about anything? You know what I mean by mimic, like a sort of like a Wendigo type situation around here?
I have not. I've never heard of
Okay,
Wendigo
all right.
or Skinwalker type activity.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I have Choctaw Indian blood in me, and I've tried to do research and find out if the Choctaws had a Skinwalker type entity in their legend, and I haven't been able to find anything.
No, you guys have Dogman. You basically do.
Yeah,
It's basically that. The Wendigo's a werewolf like entity.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
We call it Dogman. So I was actually going to ask you that question because out here in the West Coast and
hmm
the Southwest, really, they do have Wendigo as a thing. But I was just wondering if there was possible chances around your mounds you're actually having a protector spirit. Well, we'll call it a protector spirit. That's not really what I mean,
Right,
but an
right.
entity that a guardian of the gates, I guess, is probably a better term.
That's a very good point, and that's why. Again, this was borne out in some of Linda's work. Dogman around Indian mounds, sightings around mounds, is that and Native American culture, the Dogman is usually a protector, and that's why when I go to any Indian mound anywhere, I'm respectful. I don't dig.
Yes.
I don't say anything disrespectful. I don't do anything disrespectful. Um, you know, if I find like a little piece of pottery or something like that, um, I kind of ask for permission. Hey, is it okay if I take this? Hope you don't mind. I'd like to have this because I'm Native American. And that may sound silly, but again, to me,
Mm-mm.
it's a matter of respect.
We feel that way about the dead. Like a lot of these
Sure,
paranormal investigators
sure.
get all cocky and they're playing with fire. I mean, even if it
They
is the dead and
absolutely
not
are.
demonic, they're playing with fire. Yeah, you're more scientific and Christian in your way of doing it.
I had a friend in Las Vegas and he had a podcast, and I was on there one time. And when we got done with the show, I told him, I said, because at the time I was considering, and since then I'm like, no, I'm not messing with that. But I was thinking about maybe doing some ghost hunting and some ghost busting.
Yeah.
But I asked him, I said, in general,
No.
how do I do what I want to do? And he goes, "You're a Christian, right?" And I said, "Absolutely." He said, "Simple." He said, "You investigate and you research as a Christian."
Yeah.
Again, the head explodes. I've never had
Yeah.
it put to me so simple. And I'm like, okay, that's why I kind of jumped on this kind of as a ministry to help people learn and to know what's out there, especially people in the church. But kind of going back to the Dogman thing, this one particular day I went out to the mounds and I ran a thermal imager and I didn't get anything. And uh, I did a few, whoops and kind of fake wood knocks and did nothing happen. And I'm like, well, looks like today is going to be a bust. And usually when that thought goes through my head, that's when it turns out to not be a bust. So the
That's
sun comes up.
crazy.
It really is. It really is. Just when you and if you do something, you take some pictures or some video footage or audio something, and you get home, like, God, that was a bust. And then you play this stuff back, and you go, Whoa,
There it
did
is.
I just hear that? But
Yeah.
anyway, this one particular morning, I was doing what I just described, and the sun come up, and I geared up. I put my backpack on, and so I walked down this incline, and I got right in front of. On one side, there's two mounds, and then back across, there's the big mound.
Hmm.
And let me tell you something: the big mound, there's some bad stuff over there. I'm just going.
Mm.
We can talk about that in a second too. Now, the two mounds, I have never had a bad occurrence. I've never felt strange or odd, and
Hmm.
I'm not psychic or nothing like that, but I can feel, I can
Right.
tell
Right.
when something's going on.
You're an empath. I mean, that's
Yeah,
that's a God gift, you know.
I agree. I agree. So I'm
Hmm.
walking down, and I get in front of this second mound, and I just happen to look down, and the ground is hard. It's dried up. It's hard, but it's not powdery yet. And I look down, and I see these absolutely huge, huge canine prints. And I'm sitting there looking, and I'm going like, Marcus, are you really looking at what I think you're looking at? So I took out my tape measure, and a handful of these prints, these tracks, and they were obviously canine. They weren't cat. They weren't nothing in the feline family. They were canine.
And we don't have
These
wolves down here,
tracks,
so it's not a wolf. Yeah.
no, no. They say we
Yeah.
have red wolves, a little bit of red wolves. MK says that we do, and I know
Okay.
they
He would
tried to
know.
introduce them. Oh, absolutely, he
Yeah.
would. They have tried to introduce red wolves back to Mississippi, but whether that's what this was, I don't know. But these prints, they were 5.5 inches long and 5 inches
Yeah.
wide. And I took pictures, I took measurements, and I'm like, Hoss, this ain't nothing. This ain't nothing. This is not a normal guy out walking his dog.
No, the only dog that would have it big would be those big. What are they called? Those big, real tall,
Maybe
feet
an
wise.
Irish
I don't.
wolfhound or
Yeah,
something. Maybe.
wolfhound. That's what I was thinking about. But
Yeah,
here's the thing: why would somebody be walking an Irish wolfhound out by an Indian mound in Mississippi?
Yeah.
exactly. In the middle of
Occam's
nowhere.
razor. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
In the middle of nowhere, where you could probably count on one hand how many people know even what we're talking about and where we're talking about. So
Yeah.
I moved on forward, and I found others. They weren't quite as big, but they were in the 4.5 to 5 inch range. And of course, I took pictures and documented with video and tape and all like that. Well, I knew in my heart, I felt like you just discovered something. So when I
Hmm.
got home, I reached out to a couple of Dogman people, uh, and I think I only heard back from one guy, and he said it that's possible, Marcus. It's possible, but I don't know if you guys are familiar with a gentleman by the name of Martin Groves. Have any of you guys ever heard of him?
I've heard
Okay,
the name.
Mar. Okay, Martin. When I say the land between the lakes, I bet that gets your attention.
Oh yeah.
The
Yep.
the
LBJ.
land between
Yep.
the lakes in Tennessee and Kentucky,
LBL. Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
Dogman Central. And
Wow.
you have the supposed 1982 massacre, where a
Yeah.
family was allegedly killed by Dogman or Dogmen. Uh, Nothing really concrete on that, but a lot of people feel like it really did happen. And we talked about this earlier in the show. Covered up. We're
Yeah.
gonna let that get out. So,
Yep.
well, anyway, Martin Groves, he had a terrifying encounter in the land between the lakes years after that. Him and a hunting buddy, they had an encounter with Dogman and supposed Bigfoot, and they had to run for their lives. They were in danger. And if you guys ever go and look and find Martin's account, I'm telling you, when you hit play and you start hearing this man, he's a cool older dude. He's just a country boy. He's a big old country boy, but he encountered these things, and it was like they were working together. He felt like the Bigfoot and the Dogman were working together, which sounds crazy, but
It
he went
does.
through it, and it's a terrifying encounter. But I reached out to Martin, and I got in touch with him, and we exchanged a couple of emails, and then I sent him the pictures, and I just told him, I said, Martin, here's the measurements, here's the pictures. Be honest, because if you ask MK something, you ask me something, I want the truth. If it's a
Right.
Chihuahua's
Yeah.
footprint, tell me it's a Chihuahua. If you think it's a Dogman, tell me you think it's Dogman. So, and that's the way
Yeah.
I put it to Martin. And Martin fired back and he said, brother, you got something down there around them mounds. Because he had been looking into it kind of sneaky like ever since, because he was a sheriff's deputy for Tennessee. And so he couldn't be out there saying, oh, I'm your local Bigfoot guy. I'm your local
Yep.
dog band guy.
Yeah.
He had to do it kind of on the down low. So I knew
Mhm.
when I got a hold of Martin, he would tell me straight up, and he did. And he said, yeah, he said, I think you got something there. So there has been times where I was out there at those mounds, uh, and I had something growl at me one time, and now I'm wondering. First off, I thought it was Bigfoot, but now I've heard so much about Dogman being in, on, and around mounds, kind of warning folks off and all. I'm just wondering if what growled at me because uh, I was at that main mound, the one I was telling you that's scary. That
Yeah.
mound there, I think, has had some bad stuff happen on it. I've been on top of that mound and I felt like I've got bum rushed by something, some type of spirit. I've had some wild things happen there.
Well, I felt the same way. You know that mound, Emerald Mound down on the Natchez Trace? You go
Yes.
like towards yeah. All right. We used to go out there as college kids because I went to Mississippi College and just to hang out. And then I went out there later by myself because I was like, it's just peaceful. I want to go have spend some time, retreat with the Lord. I'd
Yeah,
go up,
absolutely.
and that was a sacrifice place. And man, when I went out there that last time, it was the creepy. It was just like it made my goose pimples, just all over me from being on top of that thing. It was
Absolutely.
crazy.
And again, that's I have gotten that feeling countless times on the main mound. But again, the two opposite it, I've never had. I can't recall a spooky, scary, bad vibe over there. So that main mound, it's got something bad off about it. But I went out there one morning and I had my drone and I walked
Hmm.
down the incline. I got right at the base of the mound, and I stepped off over on the right hand side, and I put my drone up because I wanted to get pictures of the river and the top of the mound. Again, it's broad daylight.
Hmm.
It's early in the morning. It's like 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. So I bring
Hmm.
the drone down, pick it up, and I cross over and get on the left hand side. I put the drone up, and I've got it up till the warning light on my remote is saying, hey, low battery. And when you get that message, you need to put her on the ground. So I brought the drone down,
Hmm.
I landed it, and I reach over. And as I'm bending over to pick the drone up, right up in front of me, up inside the foliage and everything on the main mound, this low from the bottom of the throat guttural growl come off that mound and hit me. And I'm gonna tell you something that got my attention. I'm gonna say it like this:
Hmm.
I had a firearm on my side, and I unsnapped it. I'm totally honest.
Wow.
I didn't know what was fixing to come off that mound, if anything was fixing to come off of it, but I knew in my heart that's not right. That's your normal animals. The minute I walked down, if there had been deer, hog, or something like that, they would have vacated the country. They would have
Oh
been
yeah,
gone.
even coyotes run from you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Bear. I mean, they're gonna giddy up and go. They're not gonna hang
yep,
around and watch you and play peekaboo with you. They're gone. So whatever
yeah.
this was, it was letting me know you're here, I'm here, and I don't like you being here. And like I, I did. I didn't walk up the hill. I backed up the hill. I had remote in this hand, hand on firearm on this hand. So, I mean, not that it probably would have done any good, but it made me feel better.
Yeah. Well, we probably kind of need to wrap up what we're doing here, but I want to give the other guys a chance. If y'all have any questions, y'all want to ask?
Real quick, Humphreys County strange lights, because I'm living in Humphreys County, and I
Okay.
had to at least hear something about your Humphreys County experiences. But Sky Lake,
We can talk about Sky Lake all day long.
yeah.
I mean, Sky Lake, the boardwalk, that's just out there. You can't hide that. And Sky Lake is a beautiful place, and I'll do a PR moment here.
It is.
If you have not taken your family to Sky Lake, it is beautiful. The park is pristine. You can eat off the ground out there. You have a
Wow.
boardwalk that takes you a quarter of a mile back into this ancient cypress swamps. And if you want to
Cypress. Yeah.
appreciate if you want to appreciate God's handiwork, when you're talking about a cypress tree at the base of it is as big as my bedroom here, I mean,
Mhm.
thousands of years old. That puts you right with God right there. I mean,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
yes, there, Lindsay, you're right. There, I think we talked about that. That area is where the chupacabras killed that guy's livestock. From Sky Lake to this guy's house, as the crow flies, is 5 miles.
Yeah.
There has been Black
Wow.
Panther sightings out there. I interviewed a guy out there who saw a Black Panther. MK investigated a black. I think he saw it. We'll have to ask him next time we talk to him. But I think MK had a Black Panther sighting out there right across the road from the boardwalk. Uh, we've had drone malfunctions out there. I had a $400 drone that I lost, crashed because it just went nuts. And I put it up on
Mm.
my YouTube channel, and people started commenting, "Yeah, we've tried to fly our drone at Sky Lake, nothing but problems."
It's got to be some kind of electromagnetic stuff going on.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've used a K2 meter. I've used a couple of other things out there, and yeah, I've gotten some weird readings. I took a tri-field meter out at the end of the boardwalk. Mind you, now a quarter of a mile into the swamp. There's no
Mhm.
electricity. I don't take my cell phone with me usually because that thing is emitting things, and you can get false readings from your gear. So a lot of times I'll either cut it off or I'll leave it locked up in my vehicle. But I'm out there and
Yeah.
I've got this tri-field and it's going nuts. And
Yeah.
so what is it picking up? But yeah, there's Bigfoot stuff out there, um, chupacabra stuff out there, and obviously Black Panther mystery cat stuff out there too. And I've had a lot of Bigfoot stuff. Me and MK got hit with infrasound. First and only time I've ever been hit with infrasound was out there at Sky Lake.
Oh,
And let me
wow.
tell you something, that wasn't fun. That was not fun at all.
All right. Well, I want to ask one more question and then we'll wrap it up. How much of all this do you think three-letter agencies and our government know about? What is your theory about that?
Again, I think
I
you
can't
have
resist,
to.
guys.
No. And again, I think we're wise for talking about that because when I really got back into looking at this thing 8 years ago and then a year later, getting up off the couch, as call it, um, look, if you don't believe that the United States government doesn't know about Bigfoot, about Dogman, I told a guy just the other day, I said, if you don't think there's a real X Files and a Mulder and Scully running around somewhere, you're delusional. You're
Oh,
silly. I mean, you may not have Mulder and Scully down in the basement, but
Yeah.
There's documents out there. Look at the Roswell crash and look at what J. Edgar Hoover in one of his declassified memos. He goes, the Army grabbed this thing and they didn't let me look at it. Because,
Right.
Hoover thought that he was God. Everything, he thought everything had to go through him. So, a lot of people they'll throw up that Dogman or Bigfoot might be, government creations that have escaped and run amok. And
I don't think that.
I don't know how. I don't know how I feel about that, because they've been out there way longer than the government had the means to possibly manipulate and create something like that, in my opinion. But yes, I don't think there's a shadow of a doubt that the government, the military, these 3-letter agencies absolutely is aware of what's going on. Why would David Paulides have encountered all the crap that he's encountered from your parks and the government when he started looking into the 411 phenomena? He bumped heads with it real early on. And there's just been too many eyewitnesses.
Entire areas that are sequestered off that we can't get into. Why?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, it's not just a dumb. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and they go buy up places.
Are buying up. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. The government bought up Bradshaw Ranch, which is another Skinwalker Ranch. When the people who moved out of it moved out, the government came in and bought it for like college nature type stuff. And not the first thing has been done with it for a nature reserve or anything like that. It's just sitting out there, but it's fenced off and there's government signs on it. So why did they buy Bradshaw Ranch? So the government knows. Yeah, they absolutely know what's going on. They may not have all the answers, but they know it's going on.
Well, I've got to end this podcast with the iconic statement: the truth is out there.
Indeed it is. It definitely is.
Thank you, Marcus.
Thanks, man.
Give us your details. How can our listeners reach out to you or find you?
Okay. I have a website. It's www.unexplainedmississippi.com. And if people want to reach me through there and let me know they've had a sighting or an encounter and they want to talk about it, if you want it confidential, it'll stay confidential. But I would love for people to reach out and say, hey, I had this happen. And especially if they feel like they need help. I have the Unexplained Collective on YouTube. I have a lot of videos up, and I don't just slam videos up every 5 minutes, but usually if I go out and something strange happens, I put it up. It's no frills, no reenactments. If something happens, I put it up. My email address is unexplainedms@gmail.com. So if you want to send me an email, you can reach out to me that way. But I'm pretty easy to find. And Facebook, The Unexplained Mississippi. I'm on Facebook.
Well, would you be willing to come back on another time and talk about some more stuff, maybe some UFO stuff and abduction stuff?
I would be honored to. Anytime you want me, consider me yours.
All right. Well, cool. Well, thank you, Marcus, so much. Yes, for being on a show. This was out of the park. I love it.
Yeah, yep. Really enjoyed it.
I did too. It was fun.
Thanks for listening and supporting us. And remember, stay naturally supernatural.